I've made myself clear on these airwaves that I'm a Justin fan. I believe in Justin. Not that Caleb is not talented, but I just feel like what you can get for that first pick and build around Justin, I think that's the way to go. So Lauren, why don't you go ahead and give us your take in terms of how you feel the Bears should proceed with this, big decision here.
I'll say on the front end, I am team Caleb in this decision, but I don't think it's so black and white that like, oh, if you think they should draft Caleb Williams, then you're an idiot. Or if you think they should keep Justin Fields, like it seems like there's a lot of that out there where it's like each side believes this is the one true definitive answer that the Bears should do at the quarterback position. And I think like the fact that there is such a wide split down the middle on this tells you that both sides have merit to it. I certainly see Justin Fields as a starting caliber NFL quarterback, someone who certainly wouldn't be upset if the Bears continue to build around. And I think he can still be successful as a starter in the NFL, whether it's in Chicago or anywhere else. But for me, the evaluation of Caleb Williams is high enough that I see it as my best chance at getting that. I don't want to keep putting him in the Patrick Mahomes conversation because that's not fair to anybody, but like to be that Josh Allen, Joe Burrow caliber of quarterback where it's just like a tier above what you've seen Justin Fields. I don't think he's a guarantee. No rookie quarterback is a guarantee, but I like my odds enough that it's worth the swing for the fences for me there to say, yes, let's go get this guy that I think can be something even more special than what the Bears have had with Justin Fields. And I have still enough lingering doubts about Fields. I still think he can be successful, but like what that actual ceiling looks like at this stage of his career. Like I agree with a lot of the analysis that like he has not been given a fair shot in Chicago. It has not been properly developed, but like, I don't see that as compelling enough reason for me to say, let's keep doing it. Like, yes, it sucks. And that was not good. And it was not properly handled for Fields, but like Caleb is the opportunity to get something that I think is just that much better and worth a swing there. And certainly if the Bears weren't in the number 1 overall pick, I don't think we'd be having this conversation at all.
Again. Fields for the end zone. Moore. Touchdown. With time. Throws it short. Foreman with the catch. Foreman to the end zone for the touchdown. Warriors' long pass of the day is 15 yards, and it's intercepted. Picked off by Jalen Johnson. Johnson untouched for the touchdown.
What's up, guys? Bears fans, we got big news. Keenan Allen, maybe the best route runner of our era, is a Chicago Bear. It's good to have you guys all here. Like I said, it's huge news. I see you guys all commenting about it already. We're going to get to it in a minute here, but just to get us started here, I wanted to mention real quick, as always, please, guys, give the video a like, give us a follow on YouTube, give us a follow on Twitter. We're at Barroom Network, at Jaw0235, at Tim Willis 24. I'll break it over here to my my cohort here on my left, and it's Tim. So, Tim, why don't you introduce yourself as usual and give us a quick little tidbit about your Keenan Allen reaction.
Well, like you said, I'm Tim, the better looking of the two of us. Actually, I have more hair too at the moment. But anyway, yeah, I'm Tim. It's been a crazy week for me and with the Bears too. So I've been trying to stay caught up and been doing a lot of remodeling at my house right now this week. So trying to stay caught up with the Bears, but man, I sure got every update on off the bat, and huge with the Keenan Allen signing. Remains to be seen what goes on past this year, since he's only here for one more season, but what an absolute steal for a 4th round pick to get Keenan Allen, a true number 1 wide receiver. He'll be an excellent number 2 or 1A or 1B, excuse me, with DJ Moore. It's only going to unlock the offense even more. Having 2 guys who are great security blanket wide receivers, one with a ton of yak upside and the other that's maybe the best wide receiver within 5 to 10 yards in the NFL. Always open. He fills a great need at the slot. He can also line up on the outside, whereas DJ Moore can also line up in the slot. So there's a lot of things that you can do with those two guys. Shane Waldron's going to have a heyday moving these guys around, and defenses are going to be not having fun. They're not going to be enjoying themselves. But man, what a great move. Surprised me a lot. I'm not going to lie. I honestly didn't see Ryan Poles spending a lot of money in free agency on another wide receiver when we've already got one locked up for $20 million plus annually. But hey, I'm not upset about it at all. And it's only 1 year on the books. If things don't work out, that contract is off next year, but I don't foresee that. I think it's going to work out really well. He's 32 years old, or will be 32 years old, but the production does not lie. It's there every year. The guy catches 100 balls and 1,000 yards literally every season, with the exception of one where he was injured. So, you know what you're getting out of him. And in the draft, there's a lot of talented wide receivers, but everything's uncertain with guys that have never played in the NFL. We know what we're getting with Keenan Allen. We know what we have with DJ Moore. It's going to be quite a pairing and a great combo. I'm thrilled. And I'm also thrilled with a lot of the other moves too. Like, I don't want to just harp on Keenan Allen because there was a lot of good moves made by Ryan Poles, and he went in the direction I kind of thought he would. Not spend a ton of money, but get some quality pieces here and there. So, Jeff, what besides Keenan Allen, what was your favorite move we've made so far?
Well, I do want to dig into Keenan Allen first and foremost, but I will answer your question real quick. Outside of, I guess to say my favorite move that they've made so far, it's kind of tough to say. I really do like the DeAndre Swift move. I know we talked about last week. I didn't expect them to pay money for a running back, but really $8 million is not bad for a guy who is as good as DeAndre Swift is, and a guy who has as much explosiveness as DeAndre Swift is. He's clearly the most athletic running back that's on this roster now, and it's not even close. So I really do like that move a lot. I mean, he had a career year last year, and anybody who has been watching him play over the last several years when he's healthy would tell you that he's a damn good player. And he has had some injury issues in the past, but last year he played the entire season. So, that goes to show something there. And there was actually an interview on CHGO with a guy named, I got to look up his name now. I forgot what it was already. Bo Wolf. I'm sorry. And he was with PHLY. It's the obviously the Philadelphia affiliate that is akin to CHGO here in Chicago. And he was basically saying that the first game of the year, he had like one touch, DeAndre Swift. And really it was expected that Kenneth Gainwell was going to be the guy, but then he got hurt. And then DeAndre Swift had like 200 something odd yards the next game. So it just kind of goes to show that this guy, there's a reason that this guy is, first of all, was traded to Philly. They wanted him, and now he's with the Bears. There's something here. There's something to this. It's a true weapon for this offense. And he has been a legitimate pass catcher in his past with Detroit. So I would say that was probably my favorite move outside of the Keenan Allen move, most likely. But I liked a lot of the moves that were made. I really did. They were depth moves. I don't like, for the most part, huge, splashy free agent moves unless it's a guy. You know what I mean? So I typically prefer when GMs like Poles has been doing the last couple of years kind of spend their money a little more frugally on more depth pieces, and then use their draft picks to kind of go after people, if that makes sense, especially their high capital draft picks. So what about you? Who is your favorite one of the group outside of Keenan Allen?
I would have to agree. I would probably I kind of have two of them tied for the top. I like Swift would probably be my next favorite as well, but I also really like Gerald Everett. A great pairing for Cole Kmet. And he's not simply just a move tight end. He's pretty good blocking as well. So that's a good addition. And Jared, he's also a really good red zone target, as is Cole Kmet. But, now you got two guys who are good targets. And I think that would lead more into that 12 personnel we've been talking about, especially with Shane Waldron as now the OC, and he loves to run in 12 personnel. I think that's two really good guys to pair next to each other. Again, free agent, you know what you're getting out of him. You don't know what you're getting if you draft a tight end. But again, I really like Gerald Everett. I think that was a good piece, a good compliment for Cole Kmet, and he's not coming in to be tight end one. Jeff and I have talked about this in the past. It was kind of a pipe dream for people to think that there was any possibility that the Bears will go out and draft the tight end from Georgia. Excuse me, I'm forgetting his name now. But I don't see any reality where that happens. So to me, this
Brock
made
Bowers.
Brock Bowers. Thank you. To me, that's if you're missing the tight end piece to your Super Bowl run, that's when you draft Brock Bowers that early in the draft. But again, this is a great complimentary piece to Cole Kmet. I love the addition of DeAndre Swift, especially with the money there. It's not a bloated contract, especially when we saw Saquon make $13 million annually with his contract. And DeAndre Swift it is crazy. And he's a good compliment as well. I think he fits in well with Roschon and with Khalil Herbert. And him and Herbert are kind of similar in regards to how they run. They're both a little shiftier, faster guys that aren't necessarily really good right after contact, but they know how to find holes and explode. But he's a little bit better of a pass catcher. At least he has been in the past. Not so much in Philly this year, but he definitely was in Detroit. That was where he made his money, in my opinion, or made his, that's how that's where he excelled there. So yeah, I like those two moves. I didn't hate anything we've done so far. I like the addition of another center. Now that means you can have Ryan Bates as a swing guard center player. He's probably a depth piece at this point, unless maybe they think, they're not going to re-sign Tevin Jenkins, or if they're maybe going to cut Nate Davis, who knows? Or maybe he's just an insurance policy for those two guys because they're hurt a lot. So that's a good, I like that piece to get the center. I still think they're going to draft the center, but that would be perfect bridge player for that. And he knows the scheme, obviously, coming from LA. There's nothing I hated so far. I've liked every move they've made. I wasn't as surprised this year like I was last year when we signed two backers early, but the Keenan Allen one surprised me a little bit. Like I said earlier, that surprised me, especially the trade, and the fact that they got him for a 4th round pick is unbelievable to me. You're not going to find a wide receiver in the 4th round that's going to give you what Keenan Allen's going to give you. So I'm very happy with what they've done so far. I'm excited to see what they do in the draft. It's kind of a confusing situation because now I'm even more confused than I was before what they're going to do at quarterback. But at the same time, we know that Poles is going to move down at some point. That's his MO. He's going to somewhere, somehow. I promise you he's not going to walk into the draft with 4 picks and walk out with 4 players. He's going to have more picks and more players than that. How he trades down or when, I don't know. But again, I'm excited to see what he does in the draft, and I know where he's not done in free agency yet either. So I'm happy. I'm pretty excited, Jeff. I really am.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do want to get into all these other free agents a little bit later. I also was a big fan of that Gerald Everett signing, and I want to dig into him a little bit more later too. There are clearly some connections with a lot of these free agents that were brought in. So with the coaching staff and otherwise, so that's important to know. And let's just dig into Keenan Allen real quick. First of all, there's a connection there. Ryan Poles and the Chiefs, I should say, played against Keenan Allen twice a year for, his entire career while he was in LA. So, and San Diego when he was there. So the fact of the matter is this guy has had an up close look at him, Poles, his entire career, and can see what this guy can do. And it's seen even in the last year that he still got it. This guy can still do it. And I mentioned at the top of the show, this guy might very well be the best route runner of our generation, guys. I mean, really, he might seriously be. This guy just has a knack for getting open in any kind of coverage, man or zone. He beats it all. And he just has this knack, this football intelligence that obviously the Bears seem to have a preference for, to be able to find ways to get himself open. And I mean, look at the production. If there's one word you could associate with Keenan Allen in this league, it's production. Year after year after year, it's like 100 catches, 1,000 yards. I target him in our fantasy league every year, and I somehow miss out because he goes like right before I get a chance to get him. And it's just kind of unlucky on my part. But I mean, this guy is like, there's a reason that we would go after him in fantasy because he consistently has good years. So
it's like
the fact
Keenan Allen and Mike Evans are like, every year those two guys, what they're going to do every year, for sure.
You can count on it. So even if you have like a couple guys like because every year in fantasy football, you have guys that you're like thinking, well, he should do this or he should do that with like running backs and receivers. But you can get a guy like you just said, like Mike Evans or Keenan Allen, what they're going to give you. So they're safe picks every season. And so I've had my eye on him for a long time. I've been watching him play for a while, and I just love the way he plays. We talked about it early in the show. Tim mentioned that he can play both in the slot and the outside. He is better suited for the slot. That's where he does his most damage. And what's good about this is no matter who the quarterback is, who they bring in, this guy's going to help out. And if it does happen to be Justin, if that were to be the case for whatever reason, I know there's people who are so sure on both sides what's going to happen. So I just say if, because we don't really know, obviously. So if that were to be the case, this guy's going to give Justin a middle of the field weapon that he might not really had before, because DJ Moore's probably a little bit better getting open on the outside. So this is a legitimate weapon in the slot for the Bears now that they really haven't had in a while. I mean, Darnell Mooney has not really had that production in the last couple of years that they wanted. And Keenan Allen is a clear upgrade over Darnell Mooney. So let's just get that out of the way first. Now, last night was kind of interesting. When I first got the news, I was playing softball, actually. I'm obviously a little behind Central Time. I'm a couple hours behind, so I was in the middle of a ball game. And a guy on my team says he just got this notification on his phone. I thought he was joking at first. He's like, hey, Bears just got Keenan Allen. He said it so nonchalantly. I was like, what? He's like, no, yeah, really. I was like, you're shitting me. He's like, no. I was like, no fucking way. He's like, yeah, really. They just got a 4th round pick. I was like, no way. 4th round pick? You're kidding. And it all kind of makes sense when you really think about it, guys, because if anybody is aware of the situation with the Chargers right now, they have a really very serious cap situation that they've been trying to get out from under. They've already restructured contracts with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. They released Mike Williams. Now they traded Keenan Allen. I mean, they're desperately trying to get their asses under the salary cap. And
they, not to interrupt you, but they pulled most of those guys, all those guys to the side, like into the office or maybe individual or whatever. And they said, hey, we need to restructure some contracts or we're going to have to start letting some of you guys go. And supposedly, supposedly Keenan Allen said no, and Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa both said yes. But, hey, I mean, he's got 1 year left. What do you want him to restructure? You know what I mean? So they're definitely in cap hell. That's for sure.
Cut. And here's the thing that I kind of took from it too is any of us who have seen Jim Harbaugh coach football know that he loves to run the football. Mm-hmm. And for a guy like that, especially when you're bringing in Greg Roman, who is going to run the shit out of the ball, I mean, he's probably looking at it like, I don't need these top flight receivers. I need people who can run the ball. So now, that being said, again, the biggest thing here is they had to get under the salary cap. You don't just let Keenan Allen go for a 4th round pick just because you don't think you're going to throw the ball as much and you're going to run the ball a bunch more. You know what I mean? You get rid of him because you have to. So that's why the 4th round pick went. Jay Gris says, hopefully I didn't strike out or make the game losing play for your team after hearing the news. No, I didn't strike out or make the losing play or anything like that. I've only had a couple of games here to start the season so far because last week we got rained out. But no grand salamis, Jay Grizz. I did hit one out of the park home run last year, but it's only happened once. I've hit several in the park because there's one field we play on that's got no fences out there. But I haven't really hit worth a shit so far this year. I'm trying to get into my groove, but I did make a pretty nice catch last night
this year.
And I gunned a guy down at third base also, so that was pretty nice. But anyhow, to kind of get back to the point here, Keenan Allen, what he's going to bring to this offense is something that the Bears have never really had. We're talking about, we had Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, but you're talking about 2 of the very best receivers in the entire league are on the same team right now, okay? Probably 2 of the top 10 receivers in the entire league are on the same team. Think about that. If not top 10, top 15 for sure. So, this is a massive deal. And it kind of leads me to what the Bears are going to do in the draft. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later too. But a lot of people have said now, well, that kind of takes them out of the running for a receiver. I don't necessarily think that's true. However, I do think that because of the fact that Keenan Allen is better suited as a slot receiver, I do still think that the Bears will be in the market for some type of X. And I want to get into that a little bit later because there was an interview on Hogan Johns with Josh Lucas I want to talk about a little bit later too that mentions a couple topics in regards to a receiver I want to talk to you guys about and something that he heard about Caleb Williams that was pretty interesting. So I do want to talk about that a little bit later, but to continue with Keenan Allen, yes, this is huge for whoever comes in the building, whoever, if Fields stays in the building, I should say, whoever the quarterback is, this is massive for this offense. And the Bears finally have a chance. I mean, think of all the weapons that they've got now. DeAndre Swift, Cole Kmet, DJ Moore, and I'm already blanking on the game, Keenan Allen, we just got. So Gerald Everett now too. We have legitimate weapons on this offense. And if the offensive line can stay healthy, and as Tim just alluded to, a couple of the free agents, the one free agent they brought in, Coleman Shelton, the center, and they traded for Ryan Bates, who can also play center, but who's probably better suited as a guard. I feel like, as I told you guys last week, I think he's more of a depth piece. I feel like he's more of a guy who can come in and start if you need him to, and he'll do a serviceable job. I mean, last year, as we saw, Tim mentioned it, we had some injury issues. Nate Davis and Tevin Jenkins both went down, and Jenkins has some injury issues in his past. So I think it was important to bring guys in who can do that, and they're on the cheap too. They're very inexpensive deals for these guys. So I think that was important to bring these guys in and have that depth there. And they also brought in a depth tackle as well, who we can get into too. If you don't have anything else to add about the Keenan Allen thing, Tim, I want to get into some of these other guys.
No, yeah, let's go ahead. Go ahead and start it off.
Yeah, so that kind of brings me to the depth thing I was just talking about. Another guy they brought in was a tackle, Matt Pryor, who was in San Francisco last year, but he was with Eberflus before that in Indianapolis. And I was watching his interview today at the podium. One thing that kind of struck me instantly was the individual and his size. First of all, he's this big, long-looking guy, okay? And if there's an MO for Poles tackles, it's that right there. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, yeah, this guy's a fit. He's a perfect fit for what they're trying to do on this offense. So he's obviously not going to be a starting tackle. He was brought in to be the first guy in. And that was a desperate need because they really didn't have anybody who could come in last year and play serviceable in that position. So it's nice that they have somebody who can do that now because this guy is pretty decent. So I liked that. I liked that they brought that in. And as I mentioned to you guys before, I think free agency is a good time to bring in those depth pieces, those inexpensive depth guys like DeMarcus Walker last year was a nice little depth piece that they signed. You know, and a lot of people expected him to be a starter. And at first he probably was, but it didn't end up being that way in the long run. So, yeah, I liked a lot of these moves, in particular some of these depth guys. But let's get into some of these other ones too. Tim, why don't you start it off with – let's get started on DeAndre Swift first because that was a big one, and it's a big part of this offense going forward.
Well, like I said earlier, I think he's a good fit with what we have. And, you know, Shane Waldron's going to run the ball, guys. That's what he's going to do. That's, you know, especially with this offense, they want to get the ground running. No pun intended. Like that's what they want to do. So they're going to run the ball a lot. And, you know, it was kind of a carousel of running backs last year, guys not staying healthy. I still don't think they're done at the running back position. I still think they're going to draft somebody. I really do. Or at the very least, pick up a UDFA after the draft because they're going to need running backs. They're going to need guys on the practice squad. We saw it last year. We got down to one point. We had to sign a guy off the street and move and immediately start him. He was the backup that game. Guy we had Darrington Evans. Excuse me, couldn't think of his name. So I mean, running back is obviously something that it's a position that let's face reality is a lot of guys in and out. A lot. It's a oft injured position. So having extra running backs, I think, is great to begin with. And you're getting a clear upgrade over what you've already got. DeAndre Swift is clearly an upgrade. But we also know that he does have injury concerns as well. Last year was his most games he's played in a season, and he played in 16 of the 17 last year. So, you just don't know as far as their health goes. And he, like I said, he's a big upgrade. I really like the move. And $8 million is not a lot of money. And Ryan Poles is not afraid to pay a running back. You tried to pay David Montgomery last year, and he decided to go to those bums up north instead of just, sticking out in Chicago. But, good for him because, they came within one game of the Super Bowl. So, whether or not he made the right decision or not, that's clearly for him. He probably made the right decision. But at the same time, like I was saying, we've seen he's willing to pay Ryan Poles is willing to pay running backs. So I don't hate the deal at all. I love that deal, as a matter of fact. I'm glad that it wasn't for a, like I said earlier, a Saquon Barkley deal or even a Josh Jacobs deal. Like, that's a lot of money invested in a running back, especially at that age. And, Saquon Barkley, he's even a year past his extension year because he was on the franchise tag last year, as was Josh Jacobs. So they're even a year older than they would have been. And I'm going to be fair right now, and I'm just making something up in my head, but it bothers me. I wish the NFL would remove the franchise tag for a running back, because they're lucky to get a second contract to begin with, and then you're going to push their age up another year if they get tagged. It's not fair to running backs. They're already not getting paid because they're running backs. I hate that we have a tag for them. I wish they would eliminate that.
Make it really fair in the other positions.
Make it be an automatic 2 or 3 year tag. You know what I mean? But I hate it. I know that's a random comment from me, but I don't like it, and I don't think it's fair to that position. Those guys already struggle. I think the average career for a running back is 3 years right now. That's not a long career, and it doesn't give them a lot of money, especially when most of these guys are 4th and 5th round picks. It's very minimal in your rookie deal. So, but anyway, yeah, like I said, I really like that move. I gave my input on, the tight end. Oh my goodness, one we just got from from
Gerald
LA.
Everett.
Gerald Everett. Thank you. I gave my input there. I like that one too. One that's kind of underrated that we're not talking about right now is the safety from Green Bay. Is it Matt Pryor? Is that right?
Oh, safety from Green. No, that's Jonathan Owens.
That's right, Jonathan Owens. I'm sorry, I had their names mixed. Matt Pryor was the tackle.
The tackle.
Yeah, Jonathan Owens, though, if you guys don't know this, that is Simone Biles' husband. So, that's going to bring, if nothing else, that's going to sell some season tickets, knowing that, hey, you know what? It worked in Kansas City with Taylor Swift. Maybe it'll work in Chicago with Simone Biles. I don't know. We're going to be the headlines all over the place again. But, I like it because, for one, she's on board already. Like, she took to Twitter immediately and was like, I love Chicago. So that was good for them. The Bears have already posted about her on their Twitter account. Happy birthday, Simone Biles, they said happy birthday to the newest Bears fan. But yeah, and just to go to the player himself, not like forgetting that Simone Biles is her husband. Owens is a good depth piece for safety, because like we don't have anybody else outside of the 2 starters right now that's really, we have the kid from UCLA a couple years ago we drafted. I'm blanking on his name, but we don't have a whole lot of depth at safety. That was a good depth piece. Elijah Hicks, thank you. 1 year deal, nothing massive there. Good signing. I like the depth. Like I said, I always thought we could have. We were going to sign a lot of depth pieces. I mentioned that in previous shows that I really thought most of this free agency period was going to be depth pieces along the O-line, secondary, and on the defensive line. And so far, outside of the defensive line, that's exactly what we've seen. And to me, that's kind of a writing on the wall.
So hang on. So real quick,
Michael
makes a comment that he thought Owens was a 2-year deal, but he thought he was wrong. No, Michael, you are correct. It was a 2-year deal for Jonathan Owens.
Yeah.
I think Tim just misspoke is all.
Thank you for correcting me. I did. Thank you for correcting me. But what I was saying is, it's kind of a writing on the wall for me. It means, what direction do I think they're going in the draft? I think going defensive line. Like, I have no doubt in my mind that's going to be a high top priority in the draft. And we've always seen it. Poles likes to double down in the draft. So to me, that's the position he's not addressed yet in free agency. I would think that that's probably the direction he's heading in the draft. Doesn't mean he can't, draft another wide receiver or draft another defensive back. I mean, he's drafted defensive backs every draft so far. So I just think it's definitely leaning in the direction of defensive line. And I would really like that to begin with, because I think that's one area where we could use some depth and use another starter outside of Montez Sweat. So we'll see. We'll see what happens as far as that goes, but that's kind of the direction I feel like they're going. But I honestly, to be honest, it's been a fairly quiet free agency period, with the exception of the Keenan Allen trade. That was a big one that kind of shocked everybody, I think. But outside of that, it's been a fairly quiet one, and I like that. I like that it's been quiet. Quiet to me means that we're not overspending, and that leaves us some cap room still, and we still have quite a bit of cap room, and it leads us into the draft. So, yeah, I like it. Was there anybody that I'm not mentioning, Jeff, that you want to mention?
Well, let me just address like I was talking about earlier, some of the depth stuff. You mentioned Jonathan Owens. There was a linebacker they brought in also. I'm going to jumble his name now.
You'll butcher it. Waka. I have no idea what it is.
Ogbong something. I don't know how to pronounce it, and I'm like blanking on where he came from now as well. But he is a backup linebacker and a core special teamer, and I feel like he's the Dylan Cole replacement. Yeah. And they really valued Cole last year because he was such a good special teams player. So there was a comment in here that somebody else mentioned Owens was a good special teamer as well. And that is obviously an important thing to the Bears. You can see, I'm assuming that Richard Hightower probably had some kind of influence on this. Like, hey, these guys can play teams. I want them, and these are good depth signings. Like I talked to you guys about, these depth signings are nice. They're little small money to spend in free agency to get guys who what they're going to give you. And you can use your draft picks to like shoot for the stars, I guess you can say.
Hey, I don't want to cut you off, but I wanted to say something really quick. Did you watch the 1920 football drive? Did you watch that?
Yeah, I did.
Was it Ryan Poles? I'm pretty sure it was Ryan Poles that said that Richard Hightower is the head coach in waiting over there. It surprised me a little bit. Was that? I'm pretty sure it was Poles that said it. They really value Richard Hightower.
You guys did not know that. Coach in waiting, yeah. Well, if you guys didn't know, he was one of the head coaches at the East-West Shrine Bowl. So they clearly see him as a leader of men. So, this guy, he very well could be a head coach one day. The one thing that's kind of going against him is he's a special teams coach. And I know, teams are always looking for the next best offensive-minded guy to lead their team. But there are some teams who hire – I was going to say there are some teams who hire defensive-minded coaches, and there's John Harbaugh, who's clearly a special teams-rooted coach. So it does happen. And the fact of the matter is, like I said, those are kind of important things to have as guys who can come in and do that. You don't want to get gashed on teams. It's a 3-phase game here, So especially if these guys can create turnovers on special teams, that's a huge deal. So and Owens, one thing about Owens that didn't get mentioned, this guy had a ton of starts in Green Bay too. He played a lot last year. He had a bunch of snaps. I didn't know if he started a ton.
Did he have 120 tackles last year?
He had a lot of tackles. I think he had like 70 tackles last year. So this guy,
I think it's somebody else. But
he played. Owens played a lot. I mean, this is a guy who can come in and start if you need him to. And as Tim mentioned before, that's important because we do have injuries. They had injuries last year with Eddie Jackson. We've had injury issues with Jaquan Brisker in the past. So and now they brought in Kevin Byard, and I'll get into that a little bit in a minute here. But and Aldo says the Hightower is the only coordinator not caught looking at porn. I'm assuming that's a reference to Alan Williams and why he was fired. I'm not sure what actually happened there, if that was a rumor or not, but that's kind of funny if it is. But in any case, I thought that those were good moves. I liked them. It's important. And one of the commenters mentioned that Elijah Hicks was a serviceable backup and when he came in, and he's probably serviceable, but he also he was a liability in coverage at times. And you need somebody who can come in and play and is not going to be that way. He's not going to be a liability in big game situations. So Michael says Owens gambled a lot at safety. If he comes away with some picks, that's okay. If he doesn't, and it leads to big plays, that's not okay. And that's why he's probably not a long-term starter. So hopefully he doesn't have to play a ton anyways. That's not the goal, is for him to come in and be the starter, but he can be a guy who comes in and starts and plays well enough. So that's kind of the way I look at it. But I do want to bring up Kevin Byard real quick too, because that's a defensive signing that was kind of important. And I mentioned to you guys earlier, there was an interview on CHGO with a guy named Bo Wolf, who is with Philadelphia's affiliate, PHLY. And they were talking about Kevin Byard on there, and he said that he was basically, I can't remember his exact words, but he was in basically disbelief that the Bears had went ahead and locked him up so quickly and the money that they'd spent on him. And his argument was that, he did come in mid-year in Philly in a tough situation, and obviously everybody knows there was a real controversy with Sean Desai and whether or not he was the actual defensive coordinator, and that Matt Patricia coming in. The whole defense was in shambles halfway through the season. So whether or not that was all on Kevin Byard or not, remains to be seen. But obviously, the Bears regime didn't see it that way. Now, what Bo Wolf was saying was he had looked like he'd taken a step back. He didn't quite have the juice that he used to have. But he did mention that he was a nice guy and a good interview and all those things. But he basically the points that he was making was that he was very surprised that the Bears had made that move. But regardless of whether he's the same player he was, the argument that I would make is he's still an upgrade over what Eddie Jackson was for the last couple of years. Okay, I mean he didn't really give us a whole lot, and Byard is a former All-Pro. He understands the game. He's going to come back there and be a leader immediately. And you could see it in his press conference, just the way he talked and the way he spoke. You can see that he's the kind of guy that his teammates are going to rally around him. They're going to respect him. And I just feel like he's going to understand well enough. He's going to know the defense well, and he's going to know where guys need to be. And he's going to be a vocal leader on the back end of that defense. So if nothing else, he's going to help the others around him to be very good. And he's not going to be afraid to stick his nose in there in the run game. And that's the biggest thing is Eddie Jackson had a tendency to shy away from tackling at times. And Byard's not going to do that. He's going to get in there and tackle. So, and we all know that Eberflus is all about his defensive backs and tackling.
Well, there's a couple points I want to make too, because Kevin mentions one of them right here. He says, and he's half the price of Eddie Jackson. So there's one big thing is that, he's saving half the cap hit. And number two, the guy has never missed a game or a practice for injury. He's as durable as they get. That's one thing we didn't have with Eddie Jackson for sure in his career at all, with the exception of 1 year where he was out there for every game. But for one, he's durable, incredibly durable. He's not going to miss games. And he's a ball hawk. He's got more turnover production than Eddie Jackson's had in the recent past here, with the exception of 2 years ago before he got hurt. He was having a pretty good year again. But again, injury came in. And then this year, I don't even think he had a turnover. Maybe one interception. I think he did have one interception. But just it wasn't there. I think he had one maybe. The ball production was not there regardless. It just was not there. And Byard's still going to have ball production and durability. And he's cheaper. And he's a veteran. There's all things there. And he's a leader. It was a smart, excuse me, a well-executed move that, this is the kind of thing that Ryan Poles does. They're underestimating what he has done so far. Even these little contracts, these little deals, nobody expects. Who thought in their right mind that when he signed our defensive tackle last year,
Justin Jones?
No, that we got an extension for.
Oh, I'm sorry. Billings, thank you. Billings, who saw that coming? I remember when they signed him, I thought, oh, that's a pretty good little signing there. That'll be all right. And then he turned out to be one of the best run defenders in the NFL, and he got a contract extension because of it. Well, he was already a really good run defender, but I don't think anybody expected him to. No. I think a big part of, just to kind of expound on Billings for a second, I think a big part of his play was he got into the Bears conditioning system, and they wanted him to lose a little bit of weight. And I think it kind of sped him up a bit, a little bit quicker. And he was stout as ever in the run game. And he actually got a little bit of push in the pass rush too, and it got him an extension. So, I mean, they really liked Andrew Billings, and I think they have some high hopes for his defensive line. And there's some commenters in here that have talked about the need at defensive end, and I do want to get into that a little bit later because I want to make some draft comments. So we'll get into that some, but the one thing I wanted to mention is, I do think that Byard is an upgrade at safety, regardless of whether his play fell off a little bit last year. Like I said, I understand that you can make the argument that maybe he has dipped a little bit in play as far as his physical ability, and maybe that's the case, but he's still an upgrade. And even that might not even be the case, just considering the fact that, as somebody mentioned earlier, the disarray that was in Philly. So, between the coordinator thing and just how badly they fell off at the end of the season. So, by Derek Carter, thank you. He was the one who said that Philly was in disarray and Byard's a very good signing. I do agree. I think it's a good signing. And the one other thing that Bo Wolf, the guy from PHLY, mentioned on that show was that the big reason that he was surprised because he thought there were so many other options on the market that were clear upgrades. And one thing that we have to remember is, number one, these guys have to be fits in the defense. Number two, they have to be willing to tackle. That's a big deal. They got to be good in run support. And number three, there's going to be a budget here, okay? And we all know that Poles does not go over a certain number with certain players. And he might have had interest in some of these guys, but maybe before free agency started, he kind of got the inclination from their agents that these guys were going to be a little more expensive than he was wanting to pay. So they went ahead and made a deal with Byard, someone who Eberflus has firsthand account with, going against Tennessee twice a year when he was in Indianapolis. So he knows what the guy is. He knows what he can do. It made a lot of sense. And Kevin Woodall says no loafs. He's probably right. This is probably a guy you're never going to see loafing. That was one thing he mentioned in his press conference today, or I'm sorry, I think it was yesterday, was that he's never missed a single practice in the NFL over injury or anything else. The only thing he's missed practice for was the birth of his children. That's crazy to me. And the only games that he's missed, I think he played 16 games last year, and it was only because he was traded midseason and had 2 buys. Which is, I mean, you think about that, guys. This is a guy who's going to grind it out and play no matter what. I mean, that's a leader. That's some of your teammates are going to look at and be like, I should be like that. That's somebody I need to be modeling my game after if I want to fit in here and if we want to get to where we want to go. So I liked it. I thought it was a really good move. So anything else about those free agents you want to get into, Tim? Because I do want to kind of get into some draft stuff too.
No, I want to get into some draft stuff too, because I want to know – Jeff and I have been in discussions over the last few weeks and talking about possibly doing a mock draft with you guys or doing a mock draft and then bringing it to you guys. It's something we're talking about and working out. But before we get to that, I would like to go over some of our top players at certain positions and engage the audience a little bit with that. So, Jeff, I'm gonna start here, actually, if you're okay with this. I want to start with the defensive line because like I mentioned earlier, if I had to make a bet, I would say that is definitely a direction that they go in the first round is a edge rusher. So I want you, I actually have a list. I've thought over it. And as I've done my watching tape and doing a little bit of evaluation here, I've got the guys who I think are my top 5 edge rushers. I don't know if you've got a top 5 or not, but who are some guys that you're really looking at? I know who your top is, but who are some guys you're looking at and think the Bears could go after here early in the first round?
Well, let me just start off by saying, and before I get into this, if you guys aren't aware right now, after the Bears traded their 4th round pick to one of their 4th round picks, I should say, to the Chargers, they now only have 4 total picks left. And if anybody knows anything about Ryan Poles, the last couple of drafts he's had, that is not his style to come out of a draft with 4 draft picks. First one, I think he had 10. It was either 10 or 11 in his first draft. And last year, I think he had, was it 8 or 9? So he's clearly going to come away with more than 4, in my opinion. So what does that mean? To me, that means really one of 2 things. Well, really one of 3 things. Either that's number one, and the most likely scenario at this point, which is the way that things have been leaning and the way it seems to be going at this point, is that they take Caleb Williams number 1. And then in my opinion, if that's the case, then you have to move down from 9. You have to. If you really want to acquire enough capital to come out of this draft with enough ammunition to feel good about, you want to have at least a 2nd round pick somewhere, because it doesn't look like you're going to get that for Justin Fields right now in a trade at this point in time, unless they wait it out and somebody really wants him last minute. But that's going to be after the draft, I feel like. So there's that scenario. You move down from 9 to pick up extra capital. And if that's the case, I don't know that you get one of those top edge rushers in that scenario, because you're not going to be able to get one at 9. So I don't know that you get one if you move down in the first round, because it all just depends on where you move down to. Now, another scenario is, let's say they decide they don't want Caleb Williams and they're going to move down. Now, whether that means they keep Fields or they draft another quarterback is kind of irrelevant, because for the point I'm trying to make here, which is if they move down from 1, then they pick up that extra capital. And then in your scenario, Tim, there are some edge rushers at 9 that I think they would have a chance at. So that could be possible. The third scenario, as I mentioned, was you trade down from both those picks, both 1 and 9. And now you're talking about massive ammunition and a possibility to take an edge after moving down from 1 somewhere. Okay. And either somewhere in the top 10 still. And then if you move down from 9, that opens up a lot of possibilities. If you guys aren't aware, there is a very deep wide receiver class. We all know that the top 3 receivers, the consensus top 3, everybody is pretty enamored with them. And it's understandable why, but there's a lot of receivers in this draft that are very, very good. And there's one that I'm going to talk to you guys about in a little bit. But to go back to your question, Tim, I wanted to preface that with all those things so that people could kind of understand why I say this. So if the Bears do move down from 9, they're not really going to have a chance at one of these guys, in my opinion. But if they stay at 9, one of the edges that I feel like the Bears could target, my favorite is Dallas Turner. And I think I've been on the record saying that before. I think his combination of upside, length, athleticism, stout run defender. He had a very, very good season last year. He probably would have been even more looked at highly if it wasn't for the fact that Will Anderson was on the other side of him 2 years ago and got so much attention. But this guy is a true animal. And when he comes in the league, he is only going to get better. He's only gotten better throughout his career at Alabama. He's young. I think he's only 20. This guy has massive, massive upside. And he is a prototype, in my opinion, of what the Bears are looking for with size and length and the fact that he stops the run so well. So I love Turner. Michael H. thinks that he's sadly going to Atlanta at 8, and that's a very good possibility, Michael. That's why I'm interested to see what happens at the top of this draft, because however this thing plays out, it's going to get very, very, very interesting at 9. So that was the first guy I wanted to mention was Dallas Turner, because he's my personal favorite. Another one is Laiatu Latu. And if it wasn't for the fact that he'd had some serious medical issues in his past, he might be my favorite. But that there is, even though he hasn't had an issue in the last couple of years, it is still a concern because there was a team that said he would never play football again. So that's a concern to me, regardless of what's happened in these last couple of years. Now, this guy on tape is the dude. All right, he is the dude, and he would be a great fit in Chicago, in my opinion, because he also has everything that they would look for from a physical standpoint. Okay, and this guy, he just gets after it. Okay, this guy is a phenomenal pass rusher. So, in my opinion, on tape, he's the best one right now. He would walk in and be a stud. But the medical concern is a thing to me. So, where he goes in the draft is going to be an indicator of how people think. And Aldo says that Latu's fine. He exaggerated the whole thing. I mean, if that's the case, that would be kind of funny. But the neck fusion and all that, it's still, and I understand it's a joke, but regardless. Yeah, he did have neck fusion. So that is a concern, guys. So anyways, Cliff says he's played 2 years since the surgery. You're right. I believe it has been 2 years since the surgery. He started off at Washington. They told him he'd never play football again, transferred to UCLA. He got the surgery and he's been okay. But again, like I mentioned, it still happened.
2 years has not missed a start.
He hasn't missed a start in 2 years. So he's been healthy. Okay. So that is the thing. Like I said, though, guys, if he goes early in the draft, we're going to see that some team said, okay, his medicals are clear. And there's a lot of teams who are going to love this guy. So it only takes one team to say his medical is fine for them to take the guy. So he's another guy I'm really high on. I think another guy who could be a potential fit for the Bears as far as edge is Jared Verse from Florida State. His pass rush production kind of fell off this year from where it was the year before. But he's another guy who's a stout run defender, long, exactly the kind of body type the Bears like. So he's another guy who could be a good fit there. Now, I don't think he's a guy who goes at 9. I think he's more in that 10 to 15 range, probably, maybe even later. And if that's the case and the Bears move down from 9, you might be able to get a guy like Jared Verse. But I'm not sure what direction they'll want to go if they miss out on one of the guys at the top of that edge class, because I do honestly believe that that's a guy that they're going to be targeting as somebody in that edge market. Because, I mean, look at all the moves they've made so far. It kind of appears that that's the one glaring hole at the moment that needs to be addressed. And if you're going to find a good edge rusher, if you're going to find one who's going to make a difference, you kind of got to take them early. So that's kind of, I'm only going to really mention those 3 guys because I'm not sure. I mean, Darius Robinson is another one from Missouri that I like. He had a good combine, but I just, in my opinion, guys, if they're going to take one, I think it's going to be early or they're going to move down. And I think they're going to move down anyways with 9 if they take a quarterback at number 1.
My list is a little bit different from yours, I think. I'm probably going to surprise a lot of people with what I think, in my opinion. And again, I'm not a scout. I'm not an NFL scout. I'm not an evaluator, but just from what I've watched of tape and what I think would fit well with the Bears, I'm not as high on Dallas Turner as you are. I'm just going to give you reverse order. This is the way I look at the top 5 edge in reverse order here. My number 5 would be Jared Verse. He's definitely had a really successful season and career at Florida State. I'm not so sure he's a really good fit in Chicago, just my personal opinion. There is some production there, though. I like him. He's a good player. I think I wanted to see more out of him before this season. He definitely had a really good 2023, but not a whole lot before that. So that one kind of scares me a little bit as far as an edge rusher goes. My number 4 would be Dallas Turner, which I know he's your favorite, but he'd be my number 4. I do like him. I think he would fit well in his defense. My only concern with him would be, every year he's had a ton of production, but he's had somebody outside of him who's also had a ton of production with him. But he will have that because he's going to have Montez Sweat. So, but yeah, I do like Dallas Turner. I don't hate him by any means. I like him a lot. My number 3 would be, actually, I think I gave you my order. Yeah, no, I didn't. Number 3 would be Chop Robinson for me. I really like him. Complete physical specimen, just dominant.
Definition of speed rusher right there.
Yes, I
heard
think
he's got short arms though.
Yeah, he does. He has a little bit shorter arms, but I don't think it's anything that's super concerning. But I think he might be. Maybe, possibly for the Bears. I think he would be a good fit though, and I think he'd be a good complement to Montez Sweat. Excuse me. But my number 2, and this is going to surprise a lot of people, I think, because I think he's going to fall out of the first round, but he shouldn't. He absolutely should be a first-round pick, and that's Braylon Trice. I'm a big Braylon Trice fan. If you guys watched Washington this year, you saw Braylon Trice. He's dominant. He's physical. 7 sacks this past season. He's 23 years old. He's not real young, but he's a little more mature than some of these other guys probably coming out. He played for obviously a Washington team who was very dominant during the regular season, and the only game they lost obviously was the national championship game. Best player on that defense this year, in my opinion. I really like Braylon Trice, and I think he's an excellent fit for Chicago. He would fit really well with Montez Sweat. So I really like Braylon Trice, and if I would not be surprised one bit if he does sneak into the first round, because I think he should be a first-round pick. The fact that he's falling into the second round would surprise me. I think he should be a first. You want to go ahead and it looks like you wanted to say something.
I was say I do like Braylon Trice. Do we have his measurables by chance? Do we have like his arm length and his size and his RAS score maybe by chance? If you can possibly get that, if not, it's fine. But I'm just kind of curious what his numbers look like. But I do like Braylon Trice. I think he's a pretty good player too. And based on what those numbers kind of look like would give me an indicator whether or not he's a fit for the Bears. But like I said, in my opinion, you don't find great edge rushers like, late first round, second, but you find them at the top of the draft. That's where they go. So, I mean, think about all the best edge rushers in the game right now. Think of all of them. Myles Garrett, Aiden Hutchinson, one who's up and coming right now, Will Anderson, TJ Watt. These guys were all drafted in like the top 10. Okay. These guys are all big time, high prospects. Okay. Here's the thing with Braylon Trice. So it's kind of concerning to me. Like I said, arm length is 32.5. I think ideal length for like an edge would be around 33. So that's not ideal. His size grade is not great. He's 6'3", 245. It's a little undersized. And we know Bears like their guys to be pretty stout. He did run a pretty good 40 at 4.72. So, and his 20-yard split was pretty good too at 2.74. So, I mean, these are good scores for the most part on his speed grades. He's obviously going to be more of a speed rusher, but I'm a little concerned about, how strong he's going to be at the point of attack. And, that arm length is, to me, it is a concern with the Bears because they like their guys to have long arms. And they've shown that both with tackles and with their edge rushers. So I think that's an important note there. And that's probably part of the reason why Trice's stock is showing to be more of a second-round pick, if that's the case right now. If that's kind of where he's leaning towards, I would think that'd be a big part of the reason why. So I do like Trice, though. I think he's a good player. I just feel like the 3 guys that I mentioned would be the most likely scenario for the Bears in the first round.
I didn't get to my number one yet, so I want to finish that. But go ahead.
Finish that,
well, I would just say here, Michael makes a good point here. He says Trice at a 4.7 sounds like a DT. And yeah, I can 100% see him play. And the Bears love to rotate their guys around. If you guys don't know,
4.7 is actually pretty fast for a defensive end. That's not slow.
It is. He's quick. And the thing I like about him too is 32.5 is it's a little undersized, but it's not bad, especially not for that position. I think he's not. My point is he's not terribly undersized. These are things that aren't. I don't think it's going to stop him from having success wherever he plays in the defensive line. But yeah, that's something they could definitely do is move him to the inside too. The Bears love doing that, and I think because he could be potentially a guy that you can rotate around would make him very valuable to the Bears. But in my number one is Laiatu. And my argument that I would make with Jeff is fusion. When I found out that it was a neck fusion, that's really not that big of a deal, I don't think. And Greg Gabriel's been on record mentioning this as well. It's not a big deal compared to some of the other things that it could have been, and the fact that it was a neck injury. And one point I want to make as well, he wore a neck brace his first season after the injury and didn't wear one last year. So I think the neck is in good shape. You know, I was watching his combine interview and things, and it's not like he was talking and moving his neck like this. He was free movement with his neck. He was shaking his head, yes, no, all these things. So it looks like
he wouldn't be able to play football at the level he is if he didn't have the movement that he needs. But again, you still have to consider the fact that he had this injury in the past. And if there's any kind of fear or worry that this guy could have another injury like this and end his career, that's going to be a serious question mark for a team drafting the top 10. That's the only thing. Because this guy's tape is there, all right? It's there.
My point being, if he is considered, and I think he is, the best edge rusher in this class by a pretty wide margin.
Yeah.
And I think he is by a pretty wide margin.
You
take him. You take him because the medicals have passed, because he's played for 2 years. There is going to be concern. But, Jeff, I could walk across the street tomorrow and get hit by a car. I mean, there's always the chance that something could happen. My point is he's been healthy for 2 years without any setbacks, without any issues. We know it's a fusion surgery, and we know the doctor was an excellent doctor. From what I understand, he's one of the top. Aldo says, Tim, make sure you look both ways. But my point being is, if I didn't know what the medicals were, if he hadn't played for 2 years without any setbacks, he hadn't missed any games, he hasn't even had to wear the neck brace like I mentioned earlier, he took that off for this entire season, I would not hesitate to take that guy. Because to me, the gap is pretty wide between him and the next best edge rusher in this draft. I would take Laiatu. That would be the guy I would take. That was the point I wanted to make.
Turner's my preference because he has the most upside. He's got the explosiveness. He's got the speed. He's just a freak show. And like I said, he's got the length. He's stout run defender. He does everything. And he doesn't have the medical injury issue. He's very young. He's only 20. I just feel like that's if you're looking for a guy, that's your guy right there, in my opinion.
I want to make a point here. J2K is on screen, and he says, I don't worry about Laitu's injury as much as others. I worry he's tapped out on upside with technique, and he's not a great athlete and isn't long. Can I make a comparison? People said the same thing about Aiden Hutchinson, and look what he's done. I mean, you could definitely say that, and I don't disagree, J2K. Those are definitely concerns, but people said the same thing about Aiden Hutchinson, and he's slowly becoming one of the top edge rushers in the NFL. And a guy that I honestly, when I saw him drafted, I was like, I mean, the guy is this, to me, he was the safe bet in the draft that year, but he wasn't the guy that I thought was going to have the best career. And right now, you can make the argument that he's right there. So I didn't want to stop you, Jeff. I'm sorry I cut you off, but I wanted to make that point really quickly that's Laiatu reminds me a lot of Aiden Hutchinson for sure.
No, I mean, I understand. No, I think, like I said, I think Laiatu is, I mean, he can be a very good player, but I do tend to agree with J2K that he may be, I don't know if he's tapped out per se with this upside or technique, but I feel like he doesn't have near the upside that a guy like Turner does. And that's kind of the point I was trying to make. I feel like Turner, that's the thing with Turner, you guys, this guy can be one of the very best in the entire game if he reaches his potential. So that's why I like him so much. But I do kind of want to move off edge a little bit because I want to talk about a couple of receivers. And there's one in particular that I wanted to mention if the Bears don't get one of the three consensus ones, the top three consensus ones. And there was an interview today on Hogan Johns. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see it, but Josh Lucas, former Bears personnel director, he makes appearances on there every once in a while. Today he was talking about some of the receivers, and one of the guys that I've been becoming a fan of as of late, like really becoming a fan of, is a guy named Adonai Mitchell from Texas, A.D. Mitchell. This guy has, like, he's got one of the best RAS scores in the history of the scoring system for wide receivers. He's like a perfect size to play the X, which is a position the Bears desperately need. He is a one-on-one beater at the college level. He's very difficult for guys to defend. He is if I have a wide receiver crush outside of the top three, yes, Aldo, you're right. It's Adonai Mitchell. But I do love MHJ. He's definitely my favorite receiver in this whole draft. Cliff, you're right. But he is my favorite. But Adonai Mitchell is a guy that I really, really like. I could see him going in the first round now, whereas before he was probably seen as more of a second round guy. But I could see him going somewhere in the first round. And depending on what kind of movement the Bears make, if they don't take a receiver early and he's a possibility for them, I would love that. The one thing I want to mention about him, and I'm gonna make this episode a little spicy with my next couple comments here. So speaking of Josh Lucas on Hogan Johns today, first thing he mentioned was that he heard that there were some character concerns about A.D. Mitchell. And I hadn't heard that in the past. And once I heard him say that, that kind of like was a big red flag to me, because as we've all seen in the past, Poles has a tendency to shy away from guys who have character concerns, especially in the draft. And he kind of goes more for guys who he knows are going to have a passion for getting better and, winning football and being the best they can be. As much as I think A.D. Mitchell can be the shit, that character concern stuff scares me. And speaking of that, there was another comment that was made today by Josh Lucas on Hogan Johns. And Aldo says that the Bears have red flags about Josh Lucas. We won't exactly get into that, but in any case, he was on Hogan Johns today. He was talking about the quarterbacks, okay, and what he's heard about them. And if you guys we talk about Greg Gabriel all the time. He's host of GTF here on Barroom Network. Gabriel Talks Football. He was if you're not familiar with Greg, he's worked in the NFL. He had worked in the NFL for over 30 years. He was the Bears personnel director for 9 of those years, back when they had like Urlacher and Briggs and some of those studs like Tillman. So Greg has mentioned that he's heard from some people that there were some things about Caleb Williams that were concerning. Now, there's been a lot of speculation out there from other people who've basically said there's people attacking Caleb Williams' personal character who don't know anything about him. And I can understand where they're coming from with that kind of stuff, because there are things that are being said on social media from both angles that are a little unfair. But when someone like Greg says he's heard things from people in football that are in tune, it should mean something to you guys. And he said that there were some things he'd heard about Caleb's, I don't know if it's his football character or his personal character or his off the field stuff, that was concerning to teams. Okay. It was concerning to the people he talked to. Now, Josh Lucas on Hogan Johns today mentioned that some of the things that he has heard about Caleb Williams would, quote unquote, scare the shit out of me, end quote. Yes. So when you have two personnel directors from two completely different Bears regimes who obviously have two completely different ideologies on drafting and signing players and building teams, and they're both saying things like that, that should kind of raise some eyebrows a little bit, at least, guys, okay? So I'm not saying one way or the other that this guy's got issues or not, but I am saying that when two people who are in tune with other people in the league and who have worked in NFL front offices for your Bears and other teams are telling you that people have told them things that are concerning and scare the shit out of them, that should be a little concerning to you too. Okay.
Well, and I want to mention that
real quick. Hold your thought for 1 second. Try to retain it, because I want to mention one thing real quick. I've been telling you guys for weeks now, that it is not just about the tape with the Bears. It is about the tape and the football character person. Poles has mentioned in several different meetings with the media and the public, I got to get to know the person. How many times with these players? Okay. So when this is going on and you're hearing these things, you have to consider all of that. So whatever happens here in the draft is all going to be based on that combination of person and player. If they deem Williams worthy, they'll draft him number 1. If they think that that combination is not worthy, they're moving down, guys. It's as simple as that. So that's kind of what I've been saying. That's what I believe. And, you know, I don't want to talk about it at length. I just wanted to mention to you guys that that was something that Josh Lucas said because it was pertinent information.
Well, I want to mention a couple things with that. And then it's going to lead us into the Adam Hogue clip. We haven't mentioned yet, but Aldo has a clip of us from a temper tantrum tirade that Adam Hogue discussed on CHGO, that he had on CHGO, which in some ways he's right. In other ways, I don't necessarily think he is right. But regardless of that, the odd thing about all this is, if you've watched Hogan Johns or if you've heard Josh Lucas on any other podcast, which I've heard him on a few of them as well as Hogan Johns, he's been adamant from day one, then he started doing his evaluations, that Caleb Williams is far and away the number 1 prospect, and that is the direction the Bears should go. He has been on record multiple times saying that. He's never once said to stick with Justin, ever, at any point. And then today, when Adam Johns asked him, now that you've got some more information, is there anything that changes your mind? Is he still the number 1 pick? He immediately hesitated, and he completely changed script. He said, he talked about the things that were concerning, how he heard the things that were concerning, and that scared him. He didn't like that. And he basically said, I would not draft him. I would not take him number 1. And that's a complete flip-flop from what he said. And that's from a guy getting more information than he's had in the past. And I'm going to say this again. Like I've said 100 times on this show, I'm not saying that I hate Caleb Williams, and I'm not trying to create any sort of animosity or narrative towards him in a bad way or reflecting on him negatively. But when we're consistently hearing the same things over and over and over again from people who are in the know, I'm not talking about the Chicago media. I'm talking about people like Greg Gabriel and people like Josh Lucas, who have NFL connections and have worked in this league. When we are hearing these things from those people, that is telling. And that is something that we all need to listen to, because in the end, those are the types of things that change decisions or make decisions. Because I can tell you, they're not going to take a guy who they're concerned with his character. That's not what they won't. And Ryan Poles has said that. That is 50% of the evaluation. We don't know. I don't know for sure that he has character issues. All I know is what I hear. Now, before I go any further, Aldo, if you have that clip of Adam Hogue, I want to lean into that because it goes right along with what we're talking about right now.
Because he brings up a great point. He says, Hogue, what happened to Bears fans? I have never in my life watched a fan base falsely try and destroy the character this much of a player who they will be drafting. It's sickening and making us look even more of a laughingstock of a fan base, which is 100% true. You can like Justin Fields. You can want them to keep Justin Fields. But this character assassination of Caleb Williams is so beneath you.
It's not.
But it should be.
Okay.
And this idea that Twitter is just a cesspool, which it is, should not be an excuse for what you're still doing out there. Because the reality is, we can make fun of Twitter all we want. We still spend time on it. It's still a reflection of the fan base. And these idiots on Twitter are making the entire fan base look dumb.
So before you say anything real quick, let me just mention real quick to you guys. I personally like Adam Hogue. I like the guys at CHGO. I think they provide great content. I think Adam Hogue in particular has provided great content for a long time. I think he's one of the better.
Greg Braggs is a friend of the show.
Yeah, Greg Braggs has been on our show before. I feel like, and I was just saying that I feel like Hogue has been given good content for years now. He's been one of the better members of the Chicago media, in my personal opinion. That being said, he's clearly frustrated with the whole situation. And whether or not we agree with the things that are being said by some of the people, we all have different opinions on things. I just want to make a quick note real quick that the vitriol that I am seeing on Facebook, both from people that you would expect and not expect, has been insane to me. And I just wish we could all have these conversations in a respectful manner to each other, whether or not we agree with each other or not. Like I said, there are so many people who are so sure of what's going to happen. And there's people both on that side of the coin that start the vitriol, and there's people on the other side of the coin who can't understand why they're so sure that start the vitriol. But in any case, can we all just kind of get along a little bit more with this stuff and not have the incessant name calling and stuff, and the childish shit that we're seeing on social media? It's like, guys, I just wish we could all grow up a little bit and just respect each other and have conversations. We're not calling each other stupid and stuff. And this is, like I said, I understand where the frustration is here from these guys, because it's getting to that point where it's like, we don't even want to talk about it anymore because of how much is being said and how much of this slander and just negativity is going on. It's all so, like I said, it's so childish.
So I just want to make my point of this, and I agree. I've always liked Adam Hogan. I love the content that he brings. I feel like most of the time he's the level-headed of the bunch. And he's usually the one that brings the most quality content. And he's a great reporter. I've always liked his stuff, and I've always thought he was pretty even keeled, and I appreciated that. He was never on one side or the other. But once the last game of the season hit, excuse me, he'd always been an avid Justin Fields supporter, and he was all on board to stick with Justin. And then as soon as the number one pick happened, he immediately jumped ship and went to Caleb Williams. And my thing with this whole thing is, we didn't have the whole clip here of the tirade, but he goes on to say things like, you all need to basically get over it because it's inevitable. Caleb Williams is going to be the number one pick, and he's going to be the quarterback. And yet basically saying it's happening. The thing is, we don't know that. We don't know what is going to happen yet. Until it happens, I don't know what's going to happen. This could go any direction. And I've been on record saying this. It could go anywhere. And now I'm even more confused than I was before at what direction we're going. So to me, that's a good point, in this whole thing is it's almost as if everybody's trying to push this narrative. And if you don't like the narrative, then they're going to combat you. And he's not wrong. Twitter has been nuts. And, there's been people personally attacked for their opinion on Caleb Williams. There's been people personally attacked for their opinion on Justin Fields. It's all gotten out of hand. And like Jeff said, we all need to figure out a way to get along with this, whether we want Justin or we want Caleb, or we just want the Bears to be good. In the end, that's what everybody wants, is for the Bears to be good. But there was a point on here, I think it was Bosman, that said it was funny after Josh Lucas mentioned all that about Caleb Williams, that all of a sudden the conversation stopped with the Hogan Johns. They both stopped talking about, and neither one of them mentioned the character concern part. They never brought it up afterwards. And it's just funny to me because, like Adam was saying on his little tirade video there, it's the fact that we're attacking his character, or people are attacking his character. It bothered him, and it's unfair to him. And I agree, it is unfair if there's false things being created about Caleb Williams' character. But everything that, at least on this show, everything that we've mentioned are things that we've heard from people who are well in the know, like Greg, like Josh Lucas. We've not mentioned anything on here, on this show in particular, that was made up or fabricated. Everything we've heard have been heard from people who are in the know, like I said. So I understand that they're worried about his character being attacked, and that's 100% fair. It's not fair if his character is being attacked. But at the same time, is it fair to basically throw this kid in there and say that he's the guy and basically throw Justin out without even knowing what's going to happen? It's not fair. It's not the right way to go about this. It's almost the same. It's almost the same exact thing. If you're going to sit here and say it's wrong for everybody to attack Caleb's character without knowing, it's also wrong to basically just say Justin's out and Caleb's the quarterback. We don't know that. We do not know what's going to happen. I think it can lean either way at this point. Whereas a couple weeks ago, I thought, okay, it's Caleb Williams. And then a couple weeks ago after that, I thought, okay, it's Justin Fields. And now it could go either direction. Guys, we could be...
Nobody knows shit. We've been saying that for weeks.
Let me just all in right now. You can look at it both ways. We could be all in right now and say, "Oh, we're all in. It's Justin Fields because we're pushing for playoffs and Super Bowl. We're all in. That's why we're going after Keenan Allen. That's why we're going after all these guys."
You're right.
But
okay.
It could also be the same thing for Caleb Williams. It could be, let's get him as much help as we can. So
you're right. So hang on.
Know.
So here's my point I was going to make. Look, people on both sides are so sure of what's going to happen. You got people who say, well, everything that's happened supports the evidence that it's going to be Caleb. And then you got people on the other side who say everything that's happened seems to support the evidence that we're going to go with Justin. And as Aldo says right here, and I quote, nobody knows shit. Jeff Willis, March 15th of 2024. Nobody does know shit. So look, I mean, here's the point we're trying to make. Greg said on
that out and date market.
Yeah, quote me on that. So anyways, Greg mentioned on GTF a couple weeks ago, I think it was a couple weeks ago, that every time a move has been made in free agency, all the media members and everybody who talks about things beforehand, they link different players to the Bears. The Bears never sign any of them. They never trade for any of them. It's always players that we really don't have our eyes on. I mean, there's people who speculate they could maybe like this guy or that guy, but all the reported stuff never comes to fruition, really. So that's kind of my point here, is that we don't know shit. We have no idea what's going to happen, because Poles has shown that he surprises us with stuff all the time, that he's very good at keeping cards close to the vest. We don't know what he's thinking. Cliff says, Poles knows. You're right. If anybody does know, it's Poles. But the rest of us, nobody knows shit. So we're going to wait and see. We all speculate what we might think will happen. We all have our hopes of what might happen. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing is that, like I said before, we all need to get along. We all just need to understand we don't know shit. We all just need to enjoy this process, because it's an exciting time and we have a lot to look forward to here. This is going to be a wild, wild next few weeks.
I will say that I think next week is going to be when we really start getting some answers, because next week is the pro day and the meeting with the Bears, the top 30 visit. And I think that's when we'll really know we're going to start getting a direction of where we're headed here. And I really think they've been doing, and I'm certain that Ryan Poles is incredibly frustrated right now, because he wanted to have an answer weeks ago. Like he did, and we know he did. But he can't make a decision without knowing the character and without knowing the person. And he's not going to learn that in a 10-minute interview at the Combine. They need their top 30 visit where they get the guy for 24 to 48 hours and they can really dig into the person and the kind of character that he has. That's what's going to make the decision. Because if you're telling me if it's based on the football and the tape, they probably are leaning towards Caleb Williams. Although I could make the argument that they're not. But at the same time, it's very good possibility that that's the direction they're going. But we don't know about the character yet. We don't know. They haven't had the Bears don't know the character yet. They don't know the person, not from 10 minutes of an interview. They know of the person from what they've been told from people they've called and asked about. But in the end, until they meet and until they really get to know the kid, they are not going to have an answer. They are as in-depth and as they're so into this. Trust me, this regime, even more so than any other one I've seen, in my opinion, they are very, very invested and know exactly what they're going to do. And it's because they get all the details imaginable. They are like, Ryan Poles is going to pick the person based on everything. Everything goes into the decision. So to me, until we know after this top 30 visit, that's going to give us the idea of what direction they're going. But until then, we have no idea. So all those on here, there was a point I saw a question earlier I wanted to get to, or a point that I wanted to elaborate on, but I can't remember what it was. But yeah, I mean, Jeff, is there anything you want to mention before? I think Aldo's asking for some questions. Is there anything that you want to mention before we get to that?
Yeah, we do have some questions that we're going to get to in a second here already. But yeah, feel free to load any more questions you guys have in here real quick that we can get to. Aldo does make a point here to please make sure you catch Draft on Tap next Wednesday, guys. There's going to be a special guest, Ryan Abraham. He's going to be at Caleb Williams Pro Day. So if you guys don't know, it's a show here on the channel on Barroom Network every week, and they break down the draft prospects and kind of what they expect to happen, kind of thing. And they bring in a guest every week, and it's usually pretty informative. So check that out, guys. It's a good show. There are, like I said, there are some questions in here that we can get to. I don't really have much else that I wanted to say on any of this other stuff. So let's just kind of dig into these now. So the first one we need to get to here is Sean wants to know if we should re-sign Khalil Herbert at the end of the year because he's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. You are right, Sean. He is a free agent at the end of the season. In my personal opinion, I feel like the moves that they've made kind of lead towards no, he's not going to be re-signed. He was a draft pick of a different regime, and I know that it's not necessarily a huge deal, but I'm not sure he's a great fit for the offense. He doesn't have a ton of speed. He has a tendency to get caught running down the field, if you guys haven't noticed in the past. He'll break off these big, long chunk runs, and then somebody will catch him from behind. I've always thought that was a little concerning to me, but that is something that I feel like is kind of a big deal here. DeAndre Swift with that signing, I feel like it's leaning towards he's going to get a bulk of the carries. Roshan Johnson is probably going to be in on third down a lot to help pass protect, but also DeAndre Swift is going to be the pass catcher in the backfield as well. Herbert, I think, is still going to get used a little bit on first and second down. That's where he's at his best. But I feel like this year is kind of going to be his he's not going to get a ton of action, I don't feel like, because of the moves the Bears made, but it's going to be like his resume, I guess you could say, to another team for the next, his next contract. So I don't see him getting re-signed. What do you think, Tim?
I'm seeing a lot of people commenting saying that that decision will be made after this season, and I agree because I think he's very similar running style to DeAndre Swift. I think it just depends on
money, though. Yeah.
Right. And money's obviously going to play a factor into that. I don't think he's going to command more than, $4 to $6 million annually, somewhere in there would be my guess. And depending on what kind of season he has. But to me, it's if he has more success than DeAndre Swift this year, I would say that there's a good possibility he gets re-signed. Well, we don't know that. We don't know.
But the fact of the matter is, though, is they're not going to. My guess is they're not going to bring in a guy for $8 million a year and not give him a ton of carries.
Correct.
Okay?
Agreed.
Herbert is going to take a back seat to Swift in this case, where that might not have been the case in the past. Okay, Foreman wasn't the lead back. Roshan Johnson wasn't the lead back last year. For the most part, it was Khalil Herbert till he got hurt. Then when he came back, he was kind of the guy again. So that's the thing we need to keep in mind here is they're going to give work to Swift, and it's going to – I don't see any world where you re-sign Khalil Herbert to $4 to $6 million if that's his number, like you were just saying. So I just personally don't see that in any world, but especially considering the fact where there's UDFAs and you can always draft one late too. So we'll see where it goes, but I just don't see that happening myself. So let's get to some more questions here. Dobbsy wants to know, with the Allen signing, I'm assuming he's talking about the Keenan Allen trade. Do you believe that leans towards win now, so we keep Justin Fields, since you know his floor and you see his improvement, or draft Caleb, providing a ridiculous start to his NFL career? Now, this is kind of where this is the $1 million question I was talking about.
This
$1 million question. Nobody really knows. Nobody really knows what it means. There's people on both sides who are so sure that it means one or the other. Well, you bring in these weapons with only 4 draft picks, it has to mean Justin. Or you bring in all these weapons, it has to mean you're supporting the rookie quarterback so he can have success and you guys can be good right away and not fall off. We can make the playoffs. So there's arguments to both sides. Me personally, I'm going to stop. At this point, I'm done guessing. I want to see. I'm excited to see what's going to happen. I honestly feel like we're getting to the point where stuff is really starting to come out. We're starting to learn a little bit more about these guys. So I'm wanting to see what happens on draft day. But until that time, I don't know if it leans in any direction. Like I said, Poles is so good at keeping his hand close to this. So I don't know, but I'm not sure. I don't think it leans one way or the other.
I don't either. Like I said earlier, I think it could go either way. I think there's some moves, and I want to say maybe it tilts a little bit towards keep Justin, but I don't know. I have no idea. So again, this could go either way, and I'm with Jeff. I'm not going to guess anymore until we start getting some answers. So any more questions here? I think there's another one.
Michael Gallup and Leighton Vander
Esch each released by the Cowgirls. Interesting. Yeah, Gallup I think is less likely. Vander Esch, we don't really need a linebacker. So.
Yeah, Vander Esch is getting a little old. He's a linebacker. Gallup is kind of interesting, but I mean Keenan Allen is most likely going to be the slot guy, and I feel like Gallup is more of he's kind of a speedier guy if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not sure he's really a huge fit right now at this point. So I don't really see either one of those guys being an option, especially because they just traded for Keenan Allen. So that's just my.
We got a couple more questions here. Foster asks, how bad is the real salary cap that we have available after Pettis signing? Pettis isn't going to do much towards the cap. If I'm correct, I think we have somewhere around $20 million left for the season. But again, that's, salary cap can be manipulated. There's some moves that can be made to adjust that as well. So
one thing
I think we're probably done spending big in free agency, if I had to guess. But
one thing we have to consider with the whole cap situation right now, one of two things could happen. Some of that money is allocated to the draft, and that money could get shifted around depending on what moves they make in the draft. And another part of it is if they do decide that they want Keenan Allen for more than just 1 year and they extend him, they could move his cap hit a little bit more down by giving him cash up front. So we'll see what happens there. That is a possibility to kind of give them a little bit of breathing room.
I think that's likely. I think that's
possible.
Likely.
It's possible. Yeah. So Cliff wants to know if we're going to do a couple mock drafts, one each way. We've talked about this. I think what we'll do is we're definitely going to do more than one, and we haven't really figured out yet if we're going to do it with. I'll do one, and Tim will do one, and we'll do it like, where we draft Caleb and the other one moves down, kind of thing. We haven't figured that out quite yet. We'll get to that point, but we do want to look at it from multiple perspectives for you guys, so you can see that. So last topic, there's a poll for Ryan Poles that we want to put on here for you guys to answer for us here. We want to know what you think about Ryan Poles in his 24 offseason, how you would grade it, A, B, C, or D, or worse. So right now, so far, we've got a lot of A's for Ryan Poles for his offseason, and some B's, which is pretty good too. And no C's or D's, which is good. Everybody's pretty happy, it sounds like. So go ahead and give us a grade, guys, for that. I'm sure you can find that on Twitter at Barroom Network. We also have it on here, so give us your grades on here if you want. But I think I would have to give him a solid A. I feel like the moves he's made with the bargain shopping and the trade for Keenan Allen, which was only a 4th round pick, and they've got the salary cap money to spend. I think it was good. Good offseason so far.
Yep, I give Jeff an F, but I give Ryan Poles an A. That's where I'm going.
Well. That remains to be seen what everybody else thinks. But great show tonight, guys. We appreciate you guys and all your questions. Like I said, please get that. Please give that poll a look at and give it a vote. Give us all a follow on Twitter and here on YouTube at Barroom Network, at Jaw0235, at Tim Willis 24. Give the video a like. And next week, guys, please give us a watch again. We're on every Friday. And I appreciate you, Badass Warthog. He says I'm an A+. So I guess that means screw you, Tim. The viewers like me. So
I think he's just being nice.
So we appreciate you guys as always. We'll see you next week. Bear down as always.
Bear down.